let's talk just a little bit about virtues as well. So it turns out that if you look at those stimuli that can activate the brain's pleasure circuit, they can be activated. We've talked about food and water and sex, and we've talked about various drugs and alcohol and tobacco. You can also activate the pleasure circuit with gambling, another vice. And there you might think, well, how do people come to like gambling? So one idea that a lot of people put forward is they say, well, if you go into the casino and let's say you drop a quarter into a slot machine, you do it a couple of times, and if you have an early win, then you get rewarded, and that reinforces the behavior and you're more likely to do it again. And that's a very reasonable sounding idea that turns out to be dead wrong. It's just not true. Early wins don't promote continued gambling. They don't promote compulsive gambling. It turns out that if we have you in a brain scanner, and now obviously you can't wheel a brain scanner into casinos, they don't like that. So we have to do the gambling. We give people, we do it all with real money, so people have a real investment, both literally and figuratively, in the situation. And we have a video screen in the brain scanner, and so we might animate, for example, a game of blackjack or a roulette wheel spinning. So if we spy on the brain's pleasure circuit when you spin the wheel and drop the ball in, you might imagine, all right, nothing's going to happen, nothing's going to happen, and then you either win or lose, and if you win, you get a pleasure buzz. Well, that's not what happens. What happens is that as the wheel is spinning, you see a gradually increasing release of dopamine, a gradually increasing pleasure signal within the medial forebrain circuit. That ramps up and up and up and up while the roulette wheel is spinning, and then if you win, you get an extra spike of dopamine on top of it, and you lose, you drop down a bit. Now, what does this mean? It means that we are hardwired to enjoy uncertainty. It's not just the win, it's the probabilistic nature of the enterprise that excites this. And I think if you talk with people who really enjoy gambling, they'll tell you it's actually not the winning, it's the action that is so appealing. Now, I promised you I'd get on to virtues. So, these things that are rewarding, one of the ways that you can tell that they're rewarding or pleasurable is you take an animal like a rat and you plant an electrode in its pleasure center, and you attach a wire to the electrode and hook it up to a computer, and then the computer is controlled by a lever. And so the rat can press a lever in its cage and send a weak electrical current that activates its own pleasure center. And not surprisingly, if you give the rats this opportunity, they will very rapidly bang on that lever all day long, and they really like it. So they prefer it to food, they prefer it to sex, they will cross electrified, shocking floor grids to get to it. A mother rat will ignore her newborn pups in order to keep pressing this lever. Sounds a lot like drug addiction, doesn't it? Now, if you have a rat and you ask, will it work with lever presses to get something, that's a very good predictor of whether that thing is truly pleasurable or rewarding. If you have a rat in a cage and it has to press the lever 100 times to get access to a running wheel where it can exercise, it will do that. Exercise is itself rewarding. So how many of you folks have heard of runner's high? Yeah, it's a fairly well-known phenomenon. It turns out, actually, runner's high is very rare when you get down to it. So if you go to the finish line of a marathon and you interview people and you ask, are you feeling euphoric? Actually, 9 out of 10 people will say, hell no, I'm just exhausted. I'm just glad, I'm feeling, good, I did it, and I'm feeling a sense of accomplishment. But no, I'm not feeling euphoric. But about 1 out of 10 people are feeling euphoric. And if you take those people and you put them in a brain imager, sure enough, they are seeing activation of their brain's pleasure circuit. And it seems to be because in that state, their bodies are producing what's called an endocannabinoid, a natural marijuana-like molecule that activates specific marijuana receptors within the brain and which indirectly causes activation of this dopamine-using pleasure circuit. So exercise is a virtuous behavior that produces pleasure. Learning is as well. So if it turns out that learning produces activation in the pleasure circuit, even if the information you're learning is utterly useless. So for example, if you have, I see someone pumping their fist. I'm not quite sure what to take. Must be someone who likes baseball statistics.